Hi, and welcome back to another edition of the Ville. My name is Greg Norman. We are fortunate enough to have with us four high school students from Brandon High School. And we wanted to talk a little bit this week about having to go back to school. You guys have had roughly 4.5 weeks of a variety of disciplines between in-class, virtual. We quit the year at the end of last year, but I want to start with, and we'll start with Annalisa up in the top. Annalisa, introduce yourself and tell us where you are at Brandon as far as your grade, and we'll kind of work around the schedule. My question, first question to all of you is, what kind of an experience been so far?
My name's Annalise Elliott. I'm in 11th grade. For me personally, it's been an interesting experience. I know I had to go back because I'm in the STEM program, and I think some of my classes, they're definitely pretty large, so it's been hard, the whole social distancing, and the mask has been interesting, keeping it on for such a long extended period of time, but I think that they're doing a pretty good job at that. And we do get mask breaks halfway through class, so that's nice to get to go outside.
Annalisa, explain what the STEM program is, so somebody that doesn't know what it is.
It's a math and science program at the high school. You can enroll your freshman year and it goes all the way up through senior year. And as well as like the regular math and science curriculum, they add on hands-on experience and other types of like experiences or experiments and projects that like you wouldn't get to do if you were in the regular math and science programs.
Nolan, you've had kind of a two-pronged approach. You get a chance to play sports. You're playing tennis this fall, and you're going back to school. So what's been your experience in the last few weeks?
Yeah, that's right. I'm really glad we get to do sports still with COVID going on right now, and we do have to wear like masks, and there's new special regulations for tennis. Like we have to use different sets of balls, and we can't share the same balls. But it's been pretty good so far. I'm glad we have the opportunity, and yeah, I think the school's doing a really good job keeping everyone separated and being able to like track down who might have been with who. And I'm just glad we're back. So. Yeah.
And you are Nolan Federoff, you are a junior, am I correct?
Senior. I'm a
senior.
Yeah.
Okay. Ella, talk a little bit about, maybe introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your experience.
So I'm El Benito. I'm a senior right now. I love being back in school. I think it's a great experience. We're doing good. We're wearing our masks. I'm in a lot of AP classes, so it's very important to be in person for those. I don't know, I'm in student council, the president, so it's been crazy trying to plan events. We just had our sort of homecoming celebration. We didn't get to have a dance, so that was kind of sad, but it was nice because we were still able to do a court performance, and seniors were able to go to the homecoming football game. The student section was great. Everybody was spaced out 6 feet apart on the bleachers. So overall, I think it's been a good experience. And I think administration's doing a great job handling everything.
Vince, introduce yourself. And like Nolan, you're also playing tennis and involved in school. So maybe a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, I'm Vincent Spencer. And yeah, since like the tennis, everything that's been going on, it's definitely a different experience than it was last year. From like, because usually we only use 2 balls and you just pass them back and forth, but we're not allowed to do that this year, and you got to avoid touching them as much as possible. Like one side serves them, and then you're not supposed to pick, like the other team it's not supposed to pick them up. Okay. And then like during play, we don't have to wear masks, but when we're like walking around and like after the match and everything, we usually put a mask on. People usually make us do that, but then at school, it's definitely not the same. You can't really see any of your friends. You can only see the people you're in class with. And it's like the 3-hour schedule. So it's like you're in class for an hour and 50 minutes, and that's not easy to sit in one class for an hour and 50. It takes a lot.
Okay, so let's start with the most basic question. Everybody we listen to talks about virtual learning, and it's this, that, and the other. It's easy, and we're trying to work through it. We know that college is a level, especially graduate school. I've got a son right now going through graduate school that's trying to do it virtually. Tell me, as a group or individually, what you like about it, and are there downsides to it? Because you're the ones having to learn it. And when we get past the hype and the teacher's telling how everything is great, what's the good and the bad of it?
I think personally, it's not as easy as in-person learning. I think when you're directly face-to-face with someone, there's like a lot less chance of there being a miscommunication. I know with like virtual learning, there's always big miscommunications with like due dates and what is just information they're like putting out, or what is an assignment that a teacher wants you to complete. I know like when we first went back, we weren't back full time. There was A and B days depending on like what letter your last name started with. And all the time teachers would post assignments, but they like I wasn't supposed to do them yet because I hadn't been in class to receive it. And so I think that like virtual learning, it's harder to be on the exact same page as like the teacher and the rest of the class.
Ella?
Yeah, virtual learning in my experience was awful. It didn't really learn much. I don't know, it's hard to really understand through a Zoom call like math concepts and all these different things. And especially at the beginning of the year, everyone was trying their hardest, teachers and stuff, and you could definitely tell they were trying as hard as they could, but it was very difficult, like Annalise said, with the A and B days, because you would have a class and half of the class, would be there one day and then the other half of the class would be there the next day. So then it was tricky trying to catch people up with Google Classroom and all these different things, and just hard to keep track of things.
The question to Nolan and Vincent, do you find it harder learning virtually? And let me point out that all four of you guys are model students and very exceptional students. So do you find the discipline of sitting in front of a computer more difficult than you thought, or is it about what you thought? And I asked the question because I want the parents to understand, coming from those who are actually, executing the process, to maybe get a real handle on it. I mean, it's the only thing we can do. You can't obviously go into classes and with the rules, and I get that part of it. But Vincent, you and Nolan sort of speak to, is it harder just from a concentration standpoint? And do you think parents understand what it is and maybe the pitfalls of what it is?
No, yeah, I definitely, like, personally, it was harder for me to focus during the online. Like, in school, I'm much more like interactive with the teachers and stuff. Like, it's a lot easier to comprehend everything when I'm in class, like able to talk to a teacher, because on like the Zoom call, it's hard to like get the teacher's attention and stuff. And then being in person is just much easier to stay focused and stuff like that.
Nolan?
Yeah, what I have to say about that is I feel like there's way too many like distractions at our houses, and it's just hard for me to like stay on task for that amount of time by myself and on my computer. And like much harder to learn the curriculum when we only get like say 40 minutes and they have to like lecture on a Zoom call. It's kind of just not the same at all. You don't get that connection really. So I think that's what I have to say about it.
I'm curious that the two of you talk about masks and trying to play tennis. It's certainly an outdoor sport, and you've got to breathe, and it's you're using your lungs and the rest of it. Did you find it hard, or is it becoming easier?
Well, we didn't have to wear the mask like while we actually hit, so that was good. But even like after you're hitting, when you have to put the mask on, you're still like kind of out of breath, and it's definitely still challenging, but something we got to get used to. That's it.
Yes.
Yeah, same thing with me. While we play, it's not like we'd have to wear them, but after, you're still like physically exerted from playing that whole time, and then you put it back on, and it's kind of hard to breathe through it.
I asked the question because I think of football players having to wear masks and trying to compete. It's certainly a challenge to say the very least. Mm-hmm. Question to Annalisa and Ella. Do you think your parents have you had a conversation with your parents about the process, or is it just been you've gone back to school and they don't think much about it?
Personally, my parents were like all for me going back to school. My mom did ask me if I was interested in it, and I definitely was, because I was not a fan of online learning and I found it very, very difficult. But she was a big fan of me going back to school, and like they understand that we're still social distance, we still wear masks, and there's still protocols in place if someone does get sick. And I think my mom was comfortable with that being done and like me going back to school because she knows how difficult online learning was and she values my education. So she thinks it's important.
Yeah, Lisa, and I'll come back to you in just a second, Ella. Just one real quick question. You said you really didn't like online learning. Why?
It's just, it's so unengaging to stare at a screen all day. And I mean, we're all teenagers, and you can sit and you can try your hardest, but staring at a screen and listening to someone lecture through a screen, it's so hard to pay attention for that full 40 minutes to an hour. And even if you do, it's so hard to make sure you get everything that they say to then apply it when you're trying to do your online assignment. It's so difficult. And even understand there's still like room for error, especially like with math. I think that was the hardest because like concepts can be applied so many different ways. If you were in class, you can ask questions and you can see different people going different ways like about solving problems. But then when it comes to the test and it's applied and you like aren't quite understanding it or you don't fully understand it, it's so hard to be successful.
Ella, you're going to be the president of the United States someday. So I say that certainly a compliment that you're a smart, very smart young woman. Do mom and dad understand? And have you had those conversations? And if not, do you think they would be surprised by what you guys are saying?
Well, thank you, first of all. Very, very touched by that. But my parents were all for me going back to school. Online learning for me was extremely difficult. I'm a straight A student, top of the class, and I can say that when we did online learning, my grades dropped a lot. And, I was getting like C's and D's in some of my classes, and I really had to put in some effort to get them back up. So my parents were all for it. I think that they could see like how difficult online learning was for me. So they're extremely supportive of me going back. Yeah, 100%.
Question to all of you. When you have the opportunity to talk to a teacher in a class, it's simple. You walk up, you ask a question, during the class or even after class. How difficult is it working with teachers if you don't understand concepts when you're online? Do you call ahead? Is there an appointment time? How does that all work?
Well, for most of the teachers, what was difficult was that we were doing Zoom meetings last year. We were doing Zoom meetings once a week with our teachers. And then all communication from there was through email. So that was really, really difficult, especially, with math and other subjects that are hard to understand because you were just communicating with email. You couldn't really show them what you were confused about. You couldn't really have a conversation. So that was very difficult.
I think that still holds true as of right now, because right now teachers' emails are being flooded with Google Classroom updates, regular emails from administration. There's just so much happening, and they're getting so many notifications throughout the day. And I've had teachers tell me this, like they get hundreds and hundreds every single day. That one email from you about something you're doing in class or a due date or something like that can easily get lost. And they have so much to do, especially because they have basically two kind of like books they have to put their grades in. They have one on MyStar and one on Google Classroom, that it's like almost impossible for them to get through all their emails and all of their work that they need to do. Like their workload is doubled. And so it's almost like impossible to even have communication. If you're not in class, then like your email is easily lost.
To Nolan and to Vince, the Washington Post came out probably 6 weeks ago with a survey that said that the teachers, the approval rate for teachers went from the middle 30% up to as high as 65%. Because parents are recognizing just what it is that teachers do, and now that they had kids at home, they're having to fill the spots that teachers do. Do you have a greater appreciation for teachers now than you did before?
Yeah. Like seeing what they had to go through during all that, like they had to get like everything together every day to get on Zoom with us and change their plans completely almost to make it so it was like achievable over the Zoom. And that we had to learn, because we were off of school before we started Zoom for like a month. And so they had to fit all that curriculum into the next like month and a half that we ended up doing the Zoom. So it was a lot for them. And yeah, I'm definitely appreciative of the teachers.
Nolan?
Yeah, I really appreciate how with such a short period of time, like they only had like 1 week to figure out, like to get a plan in place for us. And because they didn't know what they were going to do for all this, and it was a surprise to everyone. So I appreciate that they tried, and it's hard to teach online though. So I mean, yeah.
This is a silly question, but it's one that just struck me as Vince was answering. Are good teachers in the classroom good teachers virtually? And let me ask the follow-up part of that same question. Have you been surprised by the quality of maybe some teachers, and I don't want names, but just in a general sense, the teachers that maybe were sort of average or not maybe as engaging, that found a more light, if you will, coming through the virtual world? Has that been any revelations like that?
Yeah, I think that a good teacher in the classroom is not necessarily a good teacher online because I think that teachers were definitely, they grew up in a different time. I know that most of this technology is newer and not all teachers understand that. So I know a lot of my teachers struggled to understand how to use this technology. And that has nothing to do with how good of a teacher they are, but if they're not able to use it, then they can't teach us. And I know a lot of, especially STEM teachers, because they were already using some of this technology and we already had virtual assignments, it was a way easier transition for them. And those classes were definitely easier because they knew how to use the technology and they knew how to teach virtually and over the internet.
So there is some generational differences.
Yeah, definitely.
Anybody else got any thoughts on that? Ella?
No, not really. I mean, I agree with what Annalisa said. I think a big part of it too is that, the best teachers, at least that I've had, are the ones that engage with students and walk around and help each student individually, and they talk with kids and they really like have that individual connection with each student. And I think that's a really hard thing to replicate virtually. So I think that that's hard.
You talk about extracurricular activities being a really important part of everyday life in school. The social component has never been really looked at as anything that important. I think it's being looked at by you guys right now as being pretty crucial to be able to meet and see and have interaction with your friends. Maybe speak to that a little bit.
I can speak on that. I'm the student council president and our class president right now. So planning events has been extremely difficult. And with, being out of school for so long, I think a lot of students have begun to recognize the importance of extracurriculars at our school. They just foster a sense of community, and it really is important to the mental health of a lot of our students. Feeling like you're a part of something like a club or an activity or something like that is so important and so difficult to plan events during this time. We're doing all that we can. I know that the senior class, we had an event where we all met at the football field and watched the sunrise together and called it Senior Sunrise. People were wearing masks and socially distancing. So we can do certain events, but there's no homecoming dances. Clubs aren't allowed to meet after school. So a lot of people have kind of, felt a little lost, I think, because of that.
I definitely feel like I know it's nothing compared to seniors, but I definitely feel like I'm missing out on part of my school year because different things that I was looking forward to that I've done for the last 2 years, I don't get to do now. Like BPA, our business club, I was like a strong member in that. I was vice president last year. I was going to run for president this year. We aren't able to meet, and I'm not able to plan those meetings and run those meetings and just like connect with the members and do different fundraisers like I was able to the last 2 years.
I know it's not a fair question, but to Vincent, to Nolan, you guys will have stories to tell at your 10th and 20th and 30th, graduation reunions that a whole lot of other folks won't have that opportunity to tell. Does that matter at this point? I'm guessing not, but do you see that the paradox of where you guys are at, and maybe that changes some things, maybe look at the world a little bit differently? Guess not. Okay, that's fine. what have you learned about yourself in relationship to? By the way, I will cut that out so that there's. We'll bypass that one. I think when I said the word paradox, I just saw Nolan's eyes just glaze over.
I had no
Like,
idea.
what the are you talking about? So let me get back to this. Have you learned? I guess the question I want to ask more than anything: have you learned something from this that you think that's useful? And do you think at the same part of that question, is there something that it's not an ideal situation, but is there some things that maybe are harmful? And I'm not sure if that's exactly the right question, but have you gotten lazier because of it? Or maybe what have you learned a little bit about yourself?
I think what I've taken from this situation so far is how important like social life is, kind of, because being home for like even like 2 weeks by yourself, it gets hard. And it's like we really crave that social interaction, and it's really like unmotivating to not see anyone and not see your teachers. And yeah, overall it's just a tough situation.
Vince?
Yeah, going off like what Nolan said, it's like I really like learned the importance of like friendship and stuff, because like being alone for that long, like being stuck in your house, it's hard. Like I mean, you can't really see anyone, you can't do anything, and then like when you do get to see those people, it like changes your entire mood, it changes how you felt, and it's just, yeah, it's really important, the social interaction in that like sense. It's like
you look more forward to tennis practice now than you did before?
Of course.
Yeah, definitely.
Just because it's just a diversion, right?
Yes, and then like even being in school with even how it is, it's better than online because I get to see some people and it's way better.
Would your tennis coach tell me that you guys seem happier as a team at this point than maybe last year at the same time?
Yeah, I'd say we're more appreciative of the practices we're having, and we're more like put in work than we were. Like we're a lot less lazy, I'd say, actually, just because we have the opportunity to even be there. So.
Oh,
me?
yep.
I don't know. I think I've like definitely learned to kind of like appreciate the little moments with people, because I don't know, like I think about all the things I kind of took for granted, like before all of this happened, like, you know, all of the dances, all of the concerts, all of even going to the movies, you know. So I think like once those sort of things like open back up again, I'm really gonna like appreciate them a lot more, because you never know when it's gonna go away.
Annalisa.
I know Nolan talked about motivation, and I definitely think that's a huge thing. When you're stuck inside and you can't go see people, and you don't have like things that you have to be at, like before it was like you have practice at this time, you have an extracurricular at this time, or school is at this time. You had places you had to be that you needed to show up for, and you had like a reason to get ready and a reason to do all this stuff. Without having that, it's hard to find motivation to do things, and like motivation to spend your time doing things other than just like sitting on your phone or watching TV. And I think that can be really harmful to your mental health. And I think that quarantine was really hard for that reason. And so I think like we're all super grateful to be able to go back in person and have things like sports practices, so that we have things to do and we have things to motivate us.
Last question. In one of the aspects of this pandemic is that you've had to spend time at home, and it's either been one or the other. Either husband and wife got closer, brothers and sisters got closer, or husband and wife divorced each other. So I guess my question to you guys is that is it opened some doors at home for communication, for conversation? Because you're spending probably as much as 50% more time with your parents and your brothers and sisters than you might otherwise have done. So has that been a silver lining for most of you guys?
I know for me personally, because my brother, he works full time and he like was home for all that, and I know that we got a lot closer. Like we were as close as we were when we was younger. And like when he was with school and stuff, we got much closer. Like we hadn't talked in like as much in a long time, and that really brought us together over the quarantine. And like our whole family really just brought us together and helped out a lot with that.
Anybody else?
I think personally, I got to know my family better. And I know the beginning of quarantine, I got to spend a lot more time with my brother before he left for the service than I like would have if we wouldn't have been quarantined. And that was really nice to get to see him more before I had to say goodbye. But like the rest of my family, I definitely got to know them better, but I wouldn't say I like them better or like we're closer. I just now I know like better what type of people they are. By spending so much time with them. But I know that like in my family, we all definitely still have like boundaries and we all definitely take time to ourselves so that we're not together 24/7.
I asked the question because I grew up in an era where everybody had dinner at the same time at 5 o'clock, and life isn't like that. We don't have, phones and the rest of it, but sometimes when you have to put the phone down and some of the conversations and just interact with each other, I think there's value. And I guess I would also say the same thing is that maybe you start to appreciate, we all have people in our lives who are older and maybe isolated and they live by themselves. It might be a grandmother, maybe a neighbor. And you start to realize what living by yourself and just how much it is not a very nice thing to do in that interaction, I think is the most important factor. So maybe we all learn something from that. So any last thoughts from you guys? Anything you'd want to tell those watching what you're going through at the moment?
I think maybe if you're a parent of someone who's online right now, give them a little bit of lenience because they are just as frustrated as you are. And if you feel like your kids are lazy and laying around all day, give them a little bit of lenience because they're definitely not enjoying what they're going through. So, just have a little bit of extra grace with them.
Maybe a shout out to your teachers as well, who are going through an industry that has changed and revolutionized themselves in a relatively short period of time before most industries that can do the same thing as well. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mhm.
No,
Yeah. Shout
Anybody
out
else?
to the teachers.
Absolutely. Listen, I appreciate your time. We've been talking with 4 high school students from Annalise Elliott, Nolan Fedorov, Ella Menino, and Vincent Spencer. I appreciate your time, and we look forward to airing this and see just kind of what reaction we get. So again, thanks guys.
Awesome. Thank
Thank
you.
you.